Hi everyone, thank you for tuning into the first of the Meet Melbourne live sessions. It's great to have you all joining us tonight. My name is Lorna and I would like to start with recognising the custodians of the land throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today. I'm from the Faculty of Veterinary and Agricultural Sciences, and tonight we will be talking to you about how you can study agriculture and food science at the University of Melbourne. So we have a great panel for you tonight. We've got the course coordinator for the Bachelor of Agriculture, Roz Gall, and Roz will talk to you all about the Bachelor of Ag. And then we also have a current student, Ruby Meston, who'll talk to you about her current experience in the Bachelor of Agriculture. So tonight, if you've got any questions, feel free to pop them into the chat function on the side of your screen and we can address them hopefully in the presentation. If not, we will send you a message and answer your question, or else we can do that in the FAQ at the end. So we really appreciate you all tuning in tonight. We're very excited to have some people from Australia and other countries across the world. So that's fantastic. So yeah, tonight's session should take about 45 minutes. The session is being recorded and you'll receive a copy of this session afterwards. So stay online and we'll have lots of questions to go through at the end and really exciting experiences to hear from Ruby. So I will pass you over to Roz who'll take you through the Bachelor of Agriculture.
Great, thanks Lorna, and I'd like to join with Lorna in welcoming everybody along tonight. If this is a new way of doing the webinar, normally we're in a lecture theatre at the uni, but obviously today we're coming to you through a different medium. But hopefully you will get the same information, and I hope that we can deliver our enthusiasm for the course to you. You know, we're really looking forward to your questions at the end. Probably at the moment, it's really important to understand why agriculture is so important, and certainly no matter what happens, as we've seen over the last couple of months with you know, different arrangements in terms of working and studying and what we're doing, but we still need to eat. So going to the supermarket and getting our food's one of those really essential things that we have to do. And that really means that we need to be thinking about food into the future as well. And that's why I think agriculture is so important. We have to grow food for around 9 to 10 billion people. And that's going to require a 70% increase in food production. But really, we don't actually have any more land to grow that food on. In fact, we'll probably be growing that food on less land into the future. At the same time, we understand how important it is to be healthy, and we want high quality food that's going to give us the right sort of health properties that we need. And so we need to be thinking about the sort of food that we're growing as well. So that means agriculture is a really important industry, and I suppose it's one of the industries, as we've seen lots of industries having to take a different path over the last couple of months, both here in Australia and around the world. Agriculture is one of the industries that is keeping on and keeping going, and so that means it's a great industry to be in, because in fact it's one of the most important industries. As I always say to the students, if you're not eating, if you're hungry, you get a bit cranky, and so we all like to have good food to eat. However, there are a lot of challenges in doing that. As I said, we're going to have less land in order to be able to do that. We've still got the issues of climate change. And so that means that we need, you know, smart young graduates that understand the science of growing food, understand the science in terms of the impact of growing food, and that's really important. And so that's why we want smart young people to be coming into this industry. At the same time, we also know that students, our graduates, need to have what we call the soft skills, and that's around leadership and communication skills and organisational skills in order to manage getting food from I guess the research in terms of how we're going to grow food into the future, the growing of food, and then throughout that value chain. So we need people that have got a really strong communication and management skills, and as well as having an understanding of how those farming systems operate. And so we've been very, I guess, conscious of that within the university, and we have designed our agriculture course to provide both those scientific skills, but also those soft skills. I guess that's where we've put a lot of emphasis in the way that we've designed our courses. We did that in conjunction with industry. We went out to industry and said, what is it that you're looking for in graduates? And so they basically said, well, we need people that have got a strong applied science knowledge, as well as a real world focus and an understanding of industry. You can see there that's one of our students that has studied the program, and hopefully you can see his comment there where he's done an internship as part of his course. And that's one of the things that we think is really important for the employability of our graduates as well. We really do have very strong employment outcomes for our students, and you can see there some data that says about 89% of our graduates are employed within about 4 months of their graduation, and that's a really good statistic. Within the program, again in conjunction with industry and also listening to our students about the sorts of areas that they wanted to look at, we've developed 3 majors within the program. So we have a plant and soil science major, a production animal science major, and an agricultural economics major. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about those. We might have the next slide now, Lorna. In terms of the different majors, each of those has a different sort of emphasis, I suppose. But we also, there are other ways that you can study food science at the University of Melbourne as well. You can study it through the Bachelor of Science and doing a major in food science. You can also do an agricultural science major within the Bachelor of Science. And we've got a new major in human nutrition that's available through the Bachelor of Science and the Bachelor of Biomedicine. Some of the breadth subjects that our faculty offers as well, which are offered through lots of the Melbourne, through all of the Melbourne model degrees, are Australia in the wine world, looking at, you know, wine appreciation, I guess, and understanding more about Australian wines. Our Planet, Our Health. Noting, and I actually myself was in a webinar earlier today that was run by the Crawford Fund, which are a fund of people that are really looking at that nexus between the environment and human health, saying that, you know, human health is very much dependent on having a healthy environment as well. And so Our Planet, Our Health is really a way of looking at that. We also run subjects around brewing, understanding brewing, and a series of subjects in Food for a Healthy Planet that span all 3 years of the program. Thanks, Lorna. So I mentioned each of the majors. This is just a sample course plan for the production animal science major. Some of you may be interested in longer term looking at agriculture as a pathway to vet science, for example. So if you were thinking about animal science as a pathway to vet science, this, or even just doing animal science because you're interested in animals, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go on to vet science at all. And as I often point out to lots of students, there's lots of careers in the animal sector other than just looking at vet science as a career with animals. But these are the sorts of subjects that you would undertake. You'll note from there the subjects in green are what we call our core subjects, that and they're subjects that every student undertaking the program does. And you can see from that that the first and second year program is core to all Bachelor of Ag students. And there's a few good reasons for that. In that, one, it gives you a taste of all of those different majors, because sometimes you come in and you might think, oh, I think I want to do plant and soil science, but you actually might decide, oh, actually, I've really got an interest in the agribusiness sector and I think I'll go on and do the agricultural economics major. So within that first year program, you get exposure to all of those different areas, the animals, the plants, and the economics major as well. And as well as some science that underpins, as I said earlier, it's really important to have a strong science foundation. So some science that underpins all of that. Then in your second year, you start to go on and specialise in the subjects that are going to lead to your major subjects in your third year. And you can see there that again, you'd start to pick some of those animal subjects, and there's probably you would do animal physiology. That one's not on that particular slide, but you might do that in your second year. And then you'd go on in your third year looking at applied animal behaviour, animal reproduction and genetics, and the production animal physiology being the three subjects that in this particular one are the ones that are part of the major. But you can see that they're supported by, again, some electives that are also in that animal area around animal welfare and ethics, livestock production, disease and animal disease. And all students undertake the professional practice for agriculture subject. That's the third year subject that's core for all students. And again, that's around a lot of those soft skills that I mentioned earlier that really help you with your employability later on. I might just note there, this year for the first year, we had an Ag Discovery Week where all of our first year students came to Dookie for a week. And that was a really great experience, and the students loved that because they were actually sort of able to build a real cohort, get to know each other, because they were residential up here for at the Dookie campus for a week, and had a really great introduction to their course, and the feedback from students around that was fantastic. Thanks, Lorna. The sorts of careers are things that you might be thinking about that in terms of where you might go into the future. So this is really just a very short list of the sorts of things that students go into. So there's all sorts of different areas, but you can see there the animal veterinary pharmaceutical type careers, quarantine, biosecurity, and I mentioned earlier that webinar that I was at today, and they were talking about the importance of biosecurity going forward. So I think that that's an area where you'll see a growth of careers into the future as well. Working in the agribusiness area, maybe in agribusiness banking, or as a consultant to industry, maybe a policy maker with governments, animal welfare, soil scientists, agronomists, and then commodity traders. And because in Australia we export probably about 70% of our agricultural production. Obviously, that commodity trading area is a really important area as well. But there's also jobs in, for example, agricultural journalism that a number of our students have gone into over the years, working on programs like Landline, for example, or working for some of the rural papers like the Weekly Times or the Land. So there's lots of different things there that people can get involved in. If you're thinking about the career pathways and what you might do beyond your program, so that's, I think, the next slide, Lorna, then obviously you can do your Bachelor of Ag or Bachelor of Science with the University of Melbourne. You might have done an undergraduate degree at another university. You might then decide to do honours, for example, which is a one-year full-time program, or you might go on into the Masters of either Ag Science or Food Science, or you might go into the Doctor of Veterinary Medicine. Post that, obviously, you could do something like a PhD if that was something that interested you, or go on into the workforce. So many of our students enter the workforce at the end of their degree, and some of our students choose to go on to further study. We're not going to make those decisions tonight, obviously. You're thinking about these things, but it's just to show that there's lots of different pathways that you can take as you go forward. One of the things that we're really, I guess, proud of with our program as well is the opportunity to study at our Dookie campus, which is about 2.5 hours north of Melbourne. And it's a 2,400 hectare farm that has a number of different enterprises. For example, it has a robotic dairy. We have about 1,000 hectares of cropping. We have about 7,000 sheep at our Dookie campus, and a small apple orchard as well. Students can bring their horses along. You'll see there, that's one of our students, Emma, who was up here with her horse. You know, I think the feedback, and I think Ruby, who's going to talk a little bit from a student perspective, she'll be able to give you a bit of a feel of her experience at the Dookie campus as well. We found that that's very popular, so popular in fact that the students that chose to do that as part of their second year, in fact, were so keen they have come back. A lot of them have come back in their third year as well. You'll see there some of the redevelopment in that photo of our Parkville campus, which has just had what we call the new Webbs building, which is a fantastic resource with collaborative learning centres, state-of-the-art sort of technology in that building. It only opened at just over 12 months ago at the beginning of last year, and unfortunately at the moment we're not able to use it because we're having to do all of our teaching online, but hopefully by the time some of you join us perhaps next year, you'll be able to really take advantage of that fantastic facility. In terms of entrance, because we've got students from a whole lot of different backgrounds, perhaps some international students and domestic students, I'll just briefly cover some of the domestic pathways at this stage, but by all means, if our international students that are listening have got some questions, we can come back to those at the end or put them into the chat function and we can deal with those. But for our domestic students, there's basically a couple of entry pathways available. One is that, you know, obviously you complete your BTEC application with your using your VCE and ATAR results to come into the program. Generally, it's an ATAR of about 70 with a 25 in English and further maths at 30 or maths methods. Or if that, there's another pathway in which in fact Ruby came into the program via this pathway, which is through the Diploma in General Studies, which is a one-year program based at the Dookie campus. You can start at the beginning of the year or mid-year. And one of the great things about that program is that you do get credit for up to 7 out of 8 of your first year subjects. So it's really pretty much the same as doing first year in the ag program. And it is also a pathway into science, design, biomed and commerce. Depending, you do have to get particular scores in that. And if people have got particular questions around that, we can come back to that as well. The Diploma in General Studies is only available, though, to domestic students, so I will just make that point at this stage. So that's a really quick kind of overview from me of the Bachelor of Agriculture. I really do, in my heart of hearts, believe it's a fantastic program, and I really hope that some of you will think about taking that up in the future. I'm going to hand over to Ruby now, who's one of our current students, and she can tell you a little bit about her experience.
Hi guys, so I'm currently a mix between a second and a third year Bachelor of Ag student. So I was a mid-year intake for the Diploma in General Studies. I'll just give a bit of background of how, you know, a Melbourne girl went into ag and decided to go to Dookie. So the topic of agriculture was always a conversation topic at home because we've got family that are shearers, family with a horse property as well. But what really brought my attention to wanting to study it was actually going to the Melbourne show every year and going to the sheep and wool pavilion and looking at all the show fleeces and all the show sheep as well. And I remember having a conversation with my food tech teacher, and she was from a sheep property, and she said, well, you can actually study this in uni. And she said, do agriculture or go do a certificate in wool classing. So this time 3 years ago, I went to Roz's seminar at Melbourne Uni, definitely not on this webinar application, but yeah, so Roz started talking about, you know, life at Dookie and the Diploma in General Studies, and that definitely sparked something in my mind. And when she also said that you could do a certificate 4 in wool classing and a certificate 3 in agriculture, I knew it was definitely something that I had to become a part of, and I couldn't think of any reason not to go to Dookie. And honestly, I couldn't imagine what I'd be doing without Dookie at the moment, because it's opened so many doors, not only for myself but for everyone else there. I've worked at the robotic dairy, I've worked in wool sheds, I've worked in a piggery and a vineyard as well. So it's definitely opened doors to different avenues in agriculture. I'll go next slide, please, Lorna. So once I completed the Diploma in General Studies, I went into second semester of the Bachelor of Ag, and so these are 2 of the subjects, which are applied crop and horticulture and the principles of soil science. And it's really great to be able to take the stuff you're learning in your lectures and in your tutorials and actually going out to the polytunnels and growing your own kale and testing different growing conditions and testing the soils in the Dookie paddocks. It's definitely a more hands-on approach at the Dookie campus, even for the Bachelor of Agriculture. Next slide, please. So I think I heard Roz mention about the wine intensives. So I completed a summer internship over summer on the Mornington Peninsula on a vineyard, and I knew it would be a great introduction into the wine intensive, so the Vine to Wine and Australia in the Wine World this past February. And for one of them, we got to actually harvest our own grapes and start making our own Shiraz, and we made Riesling as well. And we got to tour Brown Brothers, which is a commercial winery and vineyard, and it was just a great experience to see the process of making wine, because when I was working on the vineyard, it was mainly just vineyard management. So it was nice to see from the vineyard into the winery and into the cellar door. So I did mention that in the DIGS program you can do your Certificate 3 in Agriculture and your Certificate 4 in wool classing, but you can also do the Certificate in Ag as a second year or third year at Dookie. So it gave us the opportunity, especially being from Melbourne, you know, to mow some lawn, to learn how to drive a tractor. In one of the photos there's a short girl and a tall girl. That was us learning how to artificially inseminate cattle, which we all got accredited for, and we learnt breeding selection of cows, watching shearing and helping in a shearing shed. It was all a part of that, and it was great having that at Dookie, because you know, when that extra time that when you're not studying, you want to be doing something a bit more productive, the certificates are a great opportunity to do so. Move on to the next. And about 20 of us last May, we went to the National Merino Challenge in Sydney, which is an opportunity you can do through the Bachelor. And so 20 of us went to Sydney, and you compete against, you know, Charles Sturt, University of Sydney, Canberra, all of those universities, and you compete in, you know, it's basically what everyone knows about sheep, and it was a really great experience, and we're very thankful to go, but unfortunately we didn't win, but it was definitely a great experience that a few of us were able to do. So being over 200 kilometres out of Dookie, it was definitely a bit of a shock, because you know, you couldn't catch the bus down to the shopping centre. It wasn't that easy to go to the movies, but the landscape you've got around you is amazing. There's Mount Major, which you can walk up basically daily. There's the canola that you can gallivant around when it's out in September. Dookie's definitely a great photo opportunity place, and there's always bonfires that we have approved by the university. There's if you don't know how to ride a horse, I'm sure one of the horse girls will teach you how to ride a horse, because there's plenty of them there. And there's the Dookie Orchard as well, which, you know, eating the apples and helping pick the apples, which was great as well. And the Dookie social life is unforgettable, really. I couldn't imagine, you know, being at Parkville and making such tight connections with a group of people. Being at Dookie, you're with really like-minded people, and we're all very passionate. We're all very passionate about agriculture, and we all like to have a good time. And last semester we made a Dookie social committee to make sure we keep that connection really close, even during stressful times. So we've got the Dookie bush dance. We had a gender swap trivia night. We had a bogan bingo. We had the 80s prom night, which was an amazing event for the end of semester. And, you know, organising that, we didn't think everyone was going to dress up, but everyone just wanted to have a good night, and not one person didn't come dressed up out of 150 people. We've organised lawn bowls through the local lawn bowl team in the Dookie town, and the Dookie township is actually a really great support system, whether it's, you know, going to the pub or wanting to play netball or football. And we've also organised to do netball in Benalla and Shepparton as well, and we went bowling a couple of times through the year, and yeah, it was just an amazing it's just an amazing place to be, and I couldn't imagine not being at Dookie. Yeah, so yep.
Thanks, Ruby. That was great. Thank you for sharing your experience with us. I know from thinking back to when I was in year 12, it's always hard to imagine what university is going to be like, especially when you're choosing a program like the Bachelor of Agriculture, where you will do a semester, or you have the option to do a semester that's not in Melbourne. So the Dookie semester is definitely a very different selling point of the Bachelor of Agriculture, and we know that most of our students love to go up there. The majority of the program is taught from Parkville, but as Roz has mentioned, some of the students, when they go to Dookie in second year, love their experience so much that they try and stay on for third year. So yeah, that's been great. Thank you so much. And we have some time now, so we've got about 15 minutes to take some questions. So yeah, so I'm just gonna get some questions and then I'll be back in a moment. So the first question that's come through is one of the students that's tuning in tonight wants to know, does this course allow you to study around the world? So is there opportunities to go overseas and do some study exchange?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Bachelor of Ag participates in the Melbourne Uni's Global Mobility Program. So students can do, say, a semester overseas. You might have noticed in the slides that I had that there was a student who'd done a summer internship. We've had some students that have participated in the Teachers Program, which is a program to Indonesia. So absolutely there are those opportunities. Just to give you a quick overview of some of the places students have studied, they've studied at in Canada at University of British Columbia or McGill Uni, University of California Davis, Wageningen in the Netherlands, Dublin Uni in Ireland, and Nottingham, University of Nottingham in England, as well as Swedish Agricultural University. So that's a few of the places that students have studied for the within the ag program.
Excellent. So Roz, you spoke a lot about the career outcomes and you know, what students tend to go and do after they study a Bachelor of Agriculture. Ruby, I might be putting you on the spot at the moment, yep. But what are you thinking about doing as your next step after?
My next step, I think, will either, I'm tossing up between going into the wool industry or going into the wine industry. They're both quite different, but I've, you know, dipped my toe into both of them, and I'm really passionate about both. So I might give work doing a vintage overseas next year, maybe in Portugal or in Spain would be a great experience. So I think I might go into wine, and there's definitely a lot of graduate positions within the wine industry. So I think I might do that.
Well, that's definitely one thing I miss about being in isolation, is going to visit a cellar door. So I think that's the first thing I'll do when this is over. So the next question that's come through is, how does agriculture and food science impact global supply chains? So I think that's very relevant to the current situation at the moment. So Rod, you might have some insight into supply chains and agriculture and food supplies.
Yeah, well, as I said, in Australia we export across the board about 70%. In some of our commodities we export perhaps 90%. So for example, around 90% of our wool is exported. Most of our wool is exported raw and is processed overseas, primarily in China and countries like Italy as well. And you know, then those once the product is manufactured, it's then, you know, exported from those countries back to all around the world as well. In terms of wheat, we export probably about 80% of our wheat that's grown. And again, that's often processed overseas, so we tend to export that mostly in its raw format. Fruits and vegetables, we grow some sort of high value fruits and vegetables, which again are exported into, you know, particular areas depending on what particular fruits it is. But so we're very much connected, I guess, to those global supply chains, whether it's with meat, whether it's with fruits and vegetables, whether it's with more commodity type products in terms of raw product like wool and wheat that we export. And so we, I guess we're a small country in terms of population, but we kind of, as I often say, we punch above our weight in terms of the exports that we do within the food chain.
That's brilliant. And, you know, I think especially with our agribusiness major, it's very important to have people in society that have the knowledge of the agricultural industry, that work in those roles and who work in those supply chains, to understand how food is produced, factors impacting production, so that, you know, we can deliver food on time and make sure we're supplying enough.
And the quality, that's right, Lorna, and the quality is really important. And I guess that's one of the things about Australian exports, is that we are known for our high quality food that we produce here in Australia.
Thanks, Roz. Yeah, so it's great to have our grads working in those roles. So thanks for that. So the next question that's come through is, I wonder whether there will be any chance for international students to be involved in the pathway course in the future. I don't know if we've got confirmation of that, or I haven't heard anything, Roz, if you know anything about that.
Look, it's something, I guess, that certainly we can look at. At the moment, it's not something that's on the cards immediately. However, you know, I do think that it's something, you know, worth thinking about and perhaps investigating a bit more. So it's certainly not off the cards. It's just not in the, it won't be for 2021.
Thank you. And we do have different pathways for international students. We've got overseas pathways and onshore pathways, ways that you can study in Australia and go into the Bachelor of Agriculture. You'll still have the opportunity to go to Dookie. So yeah, I will share some information about how you can get in touch, and then we can get some information to you about different pathways into the university. We've still got a bit of time. So Ruby, I'm going to put you on the spot again. Can you just tell me a bit more about your major that you've chose, and maybe about why you chose that major and how you came to make that decision? Because I know it can be quite intimidating for a lot of the students who are on this call now. They're trying to choose their course, and then when they start to think about what major they're going to choose, it can just get a bit overwhelming. So can you talk a bit more about the process involved?
Yeah, well, I chose, so originally I was doing the plant major, and it wasn't until maybe 2 weeks into the first semester this year when I decided to swap into the animal major, because I've definitely got more interest and I understand things on the through the animal side a lot more than I do through plants. And it was a big jump going, because I did miss a couple of weeks of the animal major this semester, and it was quite a big shock because all my subjects previously had been based around plants. But yeah, the workload is still the exact same, and but I'm definitely enjoying the animal major a lot, personally, a lot more than I did the plant major. But it did take a lot of time, and a lot of my friends were doing the plant major, and it was really hard to say, oh, should I go into a major where none of my friends are? And that's one of the reasons why I did stay in the plant major. But then I figured that I really needed to do what I wanted to do, and that's what brought me to the animal major.
And that's one of the benefits of this course, and a lot of the courses at the university, that if you haven't made your mind up when you come into first year, you do have that time to take some different subjects and figure out what you want to do. And you know, it might be hard, your friends might be studying certain subjects and you don't want to leave, but yeah, I think as over time you really figure out what you're interested in, and we give lots of opportunities for our students to do that as well. So great, we've got lots more questions coming in. So Roz, maybe you can help with this one. How is veterinary medicine related to agriculture?
Well, obviously, you know, there are kind of probably two. I'll divide veterinary medicine into two parts. Probably some vets focus more on domestic animals, so cats, dogs, pets, you know, other forms of pets. And then some parts of veterinary medicine focus on production animals, so sheep, cattle, horses, etc. So healthy animals are really important within agriculture. So vets have a really strong role to play in supporting the agriculture sector, whether it's the pig industry, the dairy industry, the beef, the sheep industries in particular, in ensuring that we have really healthy animals. And again, I mentioned the importance of biosecurity, how much we export. So all of those things mean that vets are integrally involved with the agriculture sector in ensuring, you know, that we look after our animals well, that we have healthy animals, and that means healthy foods in the end.
And yes, the Bachelor of Agriculture is a pathway into the Doctor of Veterinary Medicine. So, and we also have a veterinary medicine information session later on in this series. So if anyone here is interested in becoming a vet, please go back to the registration if you haven't already registered, and you can come along to that one as well. So another student has asked, what specific subjects would you need if you want to be able to move into the DVM?
Okay, so you would undertake that animal science major that I mentioned. In third year in particular, there are some subjects that within the animal major that focus on animal health and animal disease biotechnology. So they're the subjects that you would be taking in your, you know, your final year in order to pursue that pathway into the Doctor of Veterinary Medicine. Vet science at Melbourne Uni is, you know, in fact in all universities, is a very competitive course. So students that are thinking about wanting to go into veterinary medicine, you know, you need to be getting really good grades in order to be competitive to transition into the Doctor of Veterinary Medicine. But certainly we give you all that sort of advice when you're in the course about the sorts of subjects that you would be taking to pursue that pathway.
Excellent. And I'm going to just take one more question, and we've just got a couple of minutes left now. So moving away from vet, another attendee has asked, could you tell us a bit more about jobs in agriculture outside of farming?
In actual fact, very few of our students go into farming. Probably less than 10% would actually be, of our graduates would be involved in production agriculture per se. Most of our graduates go into what I call the service sector that supports agriculture. So I've talked a bit about that value chain or supply chain. So many of our students go into jobs that are supporting agriculture somewhere along that supply chain. So it might be pre-farm gate, might be research into new plant varieties, for example, or animal breeding techniques or something like that. So that's what I would call pre-farm gate type jobs, where you're providing the research that's going to then improve the varieties or the species that we produce on farm. A lot of it can be post-farm gate in terms of, you know, you might work for a processing company, or you might work for a commodity trader, which is again that sort of post-farm gate. It might be supporting production agriculture. So we mentioned agronomists, for example, animal nutritionists. They're people that might come onto the farm. They're not farmers themselves, but they're supporting those farmers, providing advice. How would they grow better crops? What chemicals would they use to grow better crops? How would they improve their animal nutrition? What should they be feeding their livestock, for example? It might be that they work in the banking sector where they're assessing farmers in terms of their risk if they're wanting to borrow more money to buy another farm or further investments on their properties or what have you. So a lot of our jobs are kind of around the industry of production agriculture, but not actually engaged in production agriculture. The importance of having some understanding of production agriculture is that if you're going to be providing advice to farmers, or you're going to be assessing those farmers in terms of their eligibility for a loan or something like that, you need to understand, are they good at what they're doing, and be able to communicate it, you know, with knowledge about what they're doing on their properties.
And although it might seem like quite a niche area, there is a huge demand for jobs in that industry. So I think that's an important, note to put in there. So we've run out of time, and I would just really like to thank you for coming on and sharing your expertise, Roz, and Ruby for sharing your experience. That was fantastic. And for anyone that's had a question tonight or might have an unanswered question, you don't want to stick it in the chat, I would encourage you to stay connected with us and reach out with any of your questions that you might have. So you can visit our course pages to get more information, and you can always submit an inquiry and we'll get back to you with information that you need. So thanks everyone for tuning in to the first session. There will be lots more throughout the series. So, you know, if there's anything else that sparked your interest tonight, please keep an eye out for the rest of our courses. Thanks everyone, and good night.